Deep beneath the frozen ground of the Klondike, something was stirring that would shake the entire mining world. An old shaft, abandoned for nearly 50 years, suddenly began giving readings that no one could believe, signals pointing toward a gold pocket worth as much as $160 million. At first, the crew thought their equipment was malfunctioning. But when core samples pulled from 70 to 90 feet down showed a density of 2.5 to 3 ounces per cubic yard, 5 to 6 times richer than what most placer miners consider a great day, the entire camp went quiet. On the very first test run, the wash plant spat out 320 ounces of gold, worth roughly $650,000 at $2,000 an ounce. Within days, daily recovery climbed past 400 ounces. This wasn't a lucky pocket. This was something else entirely, but here's the twist that made everyone's stomach drop. This fortune was sitting inside a shaft that could collapse at any moment. Rotten wooden supports. Water seeping in from every crack. $55,000 burning away every single day just to keep the operation running. One miscalculation, one bad vibration, and the whole thing could come down, machines, crew, everything. The camp's lead prospector, a stubborn third-generation miner named Cole Hartley, put simply to his crew, "If we're right, this is the biggest strike of my life. If we're wrong, it's over." The question hanging over every single person on site was whether they could pull this treasure out safely or whether the ground itself would decide their fate first. The shaft had a reputation long before Cole ever set foot near it. Locals called it dead ground. 3 separate outfits had tried working it over the decades, and every one of them walked away. Flooded tunnels, crumbling walls, gold too thin to justify the cost. The official reports all said the same thing: not economically viable. Most miners in the region wouldn't have looked at it twice. But Cole wasn't the type to take an old report at face value. He pulled the original drill logs, dug through decades-old geological surveys, and studied erosion patterns most people had long forgotten existed. That's when he noticed something strange. Every previous crew had only ever mined the top 20 to 30 feet. Nobody had gone deeper, because deeper meant more money, more risk, and no guarantee of a payoff. Cole started to wonder if the real story was buried far below, where anyone had bothered to look. He compared geological data across a 2-kilometer stretch and found faint traces of heavy minerals in several nearby sites too, sites nobody had ever drilled deep into either. It planted an idea in his head that this wasn't just one isolated pocket, but possibly part of a much larger, deeper gold system running beneath the whole area. The exploratory drilling alone would cost over $200,000, with absolutely no guarantee of finding anything. But Cole's philosophy was simple: play it safe, and you never win big. When the first deep drill finally went down, the tension in camp was unlike anything the crew had felt before. Every foot cost money. A single hole reaching 80 to 90 feet ran somewhere between $120,000 and $150,000. If the hole came up empty, that money was gone for good. The first core sample came up from 72 feet, and when it was cleaned off, heavy black sand and glinting flecks of gold started to appear. The lab results came back at 2.4 ounces per cubic yard. The crew assumed it was a fluke, an isolated hot spot. Cole ordered a second hole, deeper this time, to 85 feet. The number came back even higher, 2.8 ounces per yard. A third hole at 90 feet confirmed what everyone was starting to believe. This wasn't an isolated spike. This was an entire zone of concentrated, high-grade gold, the kind almost nobody sees in a lifetime of placer mining. Scaled up, the math was staggering. Every 100 cubic yards of material could yield 250 to 300 ounces of gold, worth $500,000 or more. If the zone held together across its full footprint, the total value could realistically land somewhere between $100 million and $160 million. Cole studied the samples himself under magnification and told his geologist quietly, "This isn't surface gold. This is something that's been sitting down there, concentrated, for a very long time." Numbers on paper are one thing. Gold in a bucket is another. Cole ordered a real test run, 100 to 120 cubic yards of material pulled straight from the deep zone and run through the wash plant under full observation. The entire crew watched the sluice box in silence. When the cleanup finally came, the scale read 312 ounces. For a moment, nobody said a word. That single test run was worth over $600,000, and it was just a trial, not even full production. A second run came back even higher, at 350 ounces. This wasn't a fluke. This was consistency, and consistency is the one thing every miner dreams of finding and almost never does. Over the following 10 days, the crew ran controlled test after controlled test, processing 100 to 150 cubic yards daily and logging every single result. The average recovery held steady around 3 ounces per cubic yard, an almost unheard of number in placer mining. Cole sent his geology team out to map the wider zone, drilling across a radius of nearly 200 meters, and the readings held firm everywhere they tested. This wasn't a small pocket. It was a large, continuous deposit. Calculations pointed to somewhere between 50 and 70,000 recoverable ounces, putting the total value at well over $100 million, with the richest patches potentially pushing that number past $160 million. But the ground that held all that promise was also the ground that could kill them. The old shaft's wooden supports had rotted through decades ago. Cracks ran through the walls. Water was seeping in at a rate of 1,500 to 2,000 liters an hour, held back only by pumps that could fail at any moment. A safety engineer on site didn't mince words. This isn't a mining zone anymore. This is a collapse zone. Oxygen levels in parts of the shaft had started dropping, forcing the crew to install ventilation and limit how long anyone could stay below at a time. Then it happened. A section of wall gave way during a routine dig. No one was hurt, but it was a warning nobody could ignore. Cole's answer was firm. Safety doesn't get compromised, but we don't stop either. From that point on, every movement below ground was calculated, monitored, and backed up with reinforced supports and constant pumping. Then came the financial pressure, grinding away in the background of every decision. Running the operation 24 hours a day cost between $50,000 and $65,000 daily. Fuel alone ran $18,000 to $22,000 a day to keep the excavators, loaders, generators, and pumps moving without pause. A crew of 40 to 50 people, factoring in wages, overtime, and hazard pay, added another $20,000 daily. The pumping system, constantly fighting back the water trying to flood the shaft, cost $8,000 to $10,000 a day on its own. If the operation stopped even for a few days, the losses would be catastrophic, not just in wasted money, but in the shaft flooding and destabilizing all over again. One of Cole's operations managers put bluntly, "Slow down for 5 days and we burn $250,000 for nothing." Every choice, big or small, now carried a price tag most people never have to think about. Mechanical failure loomed just as large as the financial risk. The excavators were running at their absolute limits around the clock, and any hydraulic failure or equipment breakdown could halt digging in an instant, costing time, money, and increasing the danger of instability below. One day, a main excavator's hydraulic line began leaking and had to be shut down immediately. The delay wasn't just expensive. It was dangerous because every hour lost was another hour the pumps had to keep fighting water that never stopped coming. Engineers estimated that if the pumps failed even briefly, the lower section of the shaft could flood to a critical level in as little as 90 minutes, forcing an emergency shutdown and raising the risk of collapse dramatically. Workers were only allowed below in short, tightly monitored shifts, wearing full safety gear, with a clear escape plan briefed before every entry. "Working down there means being ready for anything," one crew member said. "If something goes wrong, we might not get a warning." Cole's response was consistent every time. Gold could wait, but people came first. Still, to keep the operation moving, he brought in extra mechanics, spare parts, and backup systems, even if it meant absorbing another $10,000 to $15,000 a day. Word of what was happening at the shaft didn't stay quiet for long. Numbers like these, 300-plus ounces a day, densities 5 to 6 times richer than normal, sounded impossible to outsiders. But when the same results kept repeating day after day, skepticism turned into disbelief, and disbelief turned into respect. A veteran miner from a neighboring claim came out to see it for himself. He watched the excavators work, watched the wash plant run, and watched roughly 340 ounces get weighed out in a single cleanup, nearly $700,000 from one run. He stood there for a long moment before saying quietly, "I've never seen ground like this in my life." Other miners started showing up too, some out of curiosity, some out of concern that they'd been digging in the wrong places for years. One rival operator admitted, "If this keeps up, this one shaft could pull in over $100 million in a single season." The competitive pressure across the whole region shifted overnight. With the scale of the discovery now undeniable, Cole faced the defining decision of the entire operation. He could go slow, reinforce everything meticulously, take extra precautions, stretch the timeline out to 2 or 3 months, and accept another $3 to $5 million in added costs. Or he could push hard, bring in more equipment, run around the clock, and try to push recovery from 400 ounces a day up towards 6 to 800, translating to over $1 million a day in output. But that path multiplied the risk of equipment failure, wall collapse, and pump failure all at once. Some of his crew argued for caution. Cole made the call anyway, full aggressive extraction, starting the next day. More excavators arrived. Shifts extended to round-the-clock operation. Heavy-duty pumps and backup systems went in to keep the water under control. His operations manager warned him the pace wouldn't be sustainable for long. Cole's answer: we don't need it to last long. We just need it to last as long as the ground keeps giving. Within days, daily recovery climbed past 500 ounces, then 700. To make sure that aggression didn't turn reckless, Cole implemented a careful, staged plan. Steel casing replaced the old rotten wooden beams, reinforced every 10 to 15 feet to spread the pressure evenly across the shaft walls, a $300,000 investment that made the difference between controlled extraction and outright disaster. Digging proceeded in careful 5 to 7 foot layers, with stability checks, water level readings, and gas monitoring after every single pass. Rather than dig blind, Cole brought in a small robotic camera probe fitted with density sensors, designed to scout the richest sections below before the excavators ever touched them. If this works, one engineer said, we're not guessing anymore. We're hitting exactly what we're aiming for. Backup pumps and generators stood ready at all times, and every person on site stayed in a state of constant readiness. In the final briefing before the next major cut, Cole told his crew plainly, there's no room for mistakes left. Either we get this right, or we get nothing at all. Everything came down to a single moment. Weeks of drilling, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, daily risk to life and limb. All of it converged on one final cut into the deep zone. The camera probe had hinted at a dense pocket below, but the picture wasn't perfectly clear. If the excavator hit the right spot, it could mean $10 to $20 million pulled out within days. If the calculation was off, even slightly, the pocket could be missed entirely, or worse, the fragile walls around it could give way. Cole stood at the edge of the pit, watching the machine make its final approach, and said what everyone was already thinking: we've calculated everything we can. Now the ground decides. The bucket came down. The crew held their breath. And somewhere beneath 50 years of silence, the answer to whether this was the discovery of a lifetime or the costliest mistake of one was finally about to surface.